We're back. Music's still going.
We're
We
back.
had a little bit of walk-up music these last couple of weeks. I don't know if we're accidentally leaving the music on or if we're
Oops.
just... I kind of like it. That was especially good.
Yeah.
So, welcome back to the GORUCK Show. I'm Blayne.
And I'm here. I'm just ready to rock, man.
You're like Beavis from the Beavis and Butthead movie, just ready to go at a moment's notice.
It's good. I'm ready.
You don't look like Beavis, though. You definitely look more like Butthead.
Why, thank you. Why, thank you. Right?
What are we talking about?
I think we're going to talk about how to do guerrilla marketing like a Green Beret.
Does guerrilla marketing imply like a Green Beret, or do you feel like it's worth specifying?
I feel like there is an inherent tie-in that we will make that others might not, based upon the application of war and love and life and business all being kind of the same thing, but war being the example that you draw from, and you say the process is not that different. It's just the how.
Yeah, and so I would say this is really relevant for a lot of people because the whole world has changed around us when it comes to marketing, advertising, all of those things. I mean, there's been a total paradigm shift, right? There's almost this, so because of social media and technology more generally, there's been a complete democratization of your ability to get in front of an audience, to build an audience and to get in front of that audience and then to make an offer of some kind in very general terms. And I think that if you're still...
Everyone's Beetlejuice now.
Yeah, I mean, well, so some people would say like the whole thing has just been whitewashed because now there's so many people vying for so many other people's attention that, you know, now it went from there were all these gatekeepers and it cost a lot of money and took a lot of time to get in a magazine or in a TV commercial or whatever. And then it shifted about 6 or 7 years ago really prominently to where, maybe 10 years ago, whereas if you were on it and you figured out YouTube and social media and stuff, it was like fish in a barrel for a while. Mm-hmm. And then everyone caught on to that. And now, you know, the tools are still there for everyone to have a chance at, you know, doing the kind of the guerrilla marketing thing. But you now need to apply a set of skills to that because you can't just post something on Facebook or make a YouTube video and expect that it's going to get any attention or...
And oh, by the way, you need to be good at it.
Yeah, it should be compelling enough to watch at least, right?
I mean, just create a viral video and start, you know, a business from home. I mean, it's not enough. Anything you do one thing, it's gone, right? I mean, poof. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so. I think Tim Ferriss with the 4-Hour Workweek, was it 10 years ago? It's been a while now. I mean, people still read that book, and I guess the principles still apply, but I remember reading it and thinking like, man, some of this stuff already just doesn't work anymore because it was just so much easier back then to kind of take an advantage through guerrilla marketing and just kind of outpace the people that were still in the conventional model. But much like in war, certain things work really well the first few times you do them, but then people catch on and they adapt, you know, and then the conventional people start acting a little more unconventional. And then your unconventional warfare's got to get a little bit more unconventional.
Yeah, so
you know?
What we're saying is the resistance ultimately turns into the occupation, and everybody knows the playbook of the occupation. And even the resistance gets, you don't stay sharp, you know, you can't just keep doing the same thing over and over again and hope that it's going to keep working.
Well, I mean, one of my favorite metaphors for this, and you and I both really like music. We like bands. We like bands kind of big and small and across the spectrum. Yep. Just appreciate good music, right? And so we've talked a lot about
some bad music.
Even some bad music. I can appreciate
some bad music too.
really love music. You know, even music I don't like, I can usually tell if it's really connecting with an audience. Then I can at least say there's something there. You know, even if it's not what I want to listen to, but. You see this all the time in the life cycle of bands. There's a band that comes up and 500 people like them in their town and they get a little bit more traction. They become maybe the kind of it band that's cool to know about them because not everyone knows about them. And they're sort of the resistance in the SF vocabulary, right? But then they get a big record deal, they get a great tour, everyone loves them, they're on mainstream radio. They sort of become the occupation and through no fault of their own in most cases. And honestly, many of them without even changing their music, you know, they become sort of the conventional force that now, in a year's time, the resistance is another band, and then another band, and so on and so on.
And
so
the
how
new
do you keep
resistance
doing
is
that?
literally calling the old resistance the sellouts and the right. They're the problem now. Yep. They signed some record deal with someone, so they don't have to, you know, sleep in the car of their or the whatever, right?
Yeah, screw them for not wanting to sleep in their car and eat ramen 40 weeks a year.
Yeah, it's like they got their whole family in their car still, and they're 45, and then they don't. And
if they love their music,
out.
That's what they would do forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, but it's important to go back to those roots. Anyway, we'll talk about GORUCK in that role in maybe a bit, but let's go back to our sort of roots, our foundation in SF, and talk about kind of what guerrilla warfare means to us, because then we're going to talk about GORUCK, and the blueprint is going to basically be the same.
Yeah, big shocker. And the last organization that I worked for, people ask, how did it work? And you're like, it's just the SF model. And they're like, oh, big shocker that an SF guy applied the SF model with a level of success. And it's like, well, yeah, because it's a good model. It's a good model if you apply the fundamentals consistently. And again, it's not the technological or the social media trick that happens to be good for a period of time. It's going back to a framework and to the fundamentals that the tactics may change, but the foundation, the framework is kind of the same, right?
Right. So the classic Special Forces mission, right? By with and through an indigenous force. You show up. My favorite example is post 9/11 Afghanistan. Although this
It's everyone's favorite example because it went so
everyone
well.
in our generation, especially with 12 strong out and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, a couple hundred Green Berets initially far fewer than that.
Yeah.
Move in, link up with the Northern Alliance in the boneyard of the Soviet Empire, by the way. And initial battle plans coming from Department of Defense and otherwise said 30, 60,000 troops. They couldn't get them in fast enough, and they said, hey, we can send in the Green Berets and some agency folks and link up with the Northern Alliance, who hates the Taliban. So you show up, and by the way, the Northern Alliance looks just like the Taliban.
The enemy of my enemy, you know what I mean? That was kind of who they were, yeah.
So the Green Berets show up and they link up with the Northern Alliance, and then they get the Northern Alliance to show them how to defeat the Taliban. And we're more sophisticated soldiers, better training, better weapons, and we have the Air Force, and we're able.
That's a pretty good caveat to include, yeah.
But it's not to diminish the beginning. I mean,
no.
There's some great fighters over there, but we're the best. And so, that said, the goal is not to fight fair.
No.
Like, hey, I think I'll just go over there and not bring the Air Force with me. No thanks. That is not the way to go. So anyway, you link up and they do the work for you. Yes, you're there with them. Yes, you have risk as a Green Beret, but there's a lot more of the indigenous forces because you've trained them, you've partnered with them, you've built rapport with them. You're working by, with, and through them to defeat the enemy.
Yeah, and so there are a couple things that make that useful. One is you're immediately doing what we would call you being a force multiplier. So you take your 12 guys from Tennessee, Fort Campbell, Kentucky. There's no 12 humans in the world that you could plop down on the northern edge of Afghanistan and have them accomplish anything, right? So you've got to work by, with, and through simply because you have to be a force multiplier. I mean, it's just a math problem at that point. You can't do anything against the force that you're trying to go up against with the size people you have, no matter how well trained they are, how technologically advanced they are. So force multiplication is huge. The second piece of that, though, is the knowledge. And so it's very easy to assume in a lot of cases because we're wealthier or we're better educated or we're more physically fit, better trained, whatever.
Or we can Google it.
Yeah, that we have knowledge at the tip of our fingers at all times. We don't really have knowledge, we have information at the tip of our fingers. But what the Northern Alliance provided was knowledge. I mean, they had local knowledge of not just the terrain, but of the enemy, of the personalities. I mean, there was a lot of interpersonal stuff going on here. Like this general had to work with that general, and they knew who was leading the Taliban, and all that stuff. And so you're able to leverage.
This town matters more than that town.
Which, by the way, yeah, and that mattered.
Sharif.
Yes, we're like, who cares about Mazar-e Sharif? And they're like, no. When Mazar-e Sharif falls, then Kabul will fall. And we were like scratching our heads at that. But as it turns out, that ended up being true. And so not only do you have a bigger force to put against the problem in a more distributed manner, but you have much better knowledge to apply to the problem. So those are the two biggest things that working kind of by, with, and through do for you. But the last little piece of that is it can also become scalable. And so now you've got enough to be successful in a small way, but it provides a model for success to where now you just drop down 12 more guys over here and you've got a scalable model because then 12 equals 300 here, another 12 equals 300 there. And so now you can see the thing growing exponentially. And that's, when you start talking about business, that's a pretty good model to apply too. Because you can't, like, how many cities can you and I be in at one time?
Well, between the two of us, 2.
Exactly, right? But I mean, in how many cities would we like for people to be rucking in a given day, let's say? It's a given Friday.
All of them.
Yeah, all the cities, right?
Yeah.
And so there you go. You're up against it immediately. You've got to figure out a way to get, you know, the two of us, and then we've got another handful of people that work here, and then you inspire the rucking club in Fredericksburg and in Tampa and then wherever, and you kind of, it goes from there.
So the thing is it's like anything that really matters in life. It's cool to listen to somebody talk about what they know and how they're doing it. And our hope is that you're able to take some of this back to your daily life. That's one of our big things at GORUCK. But ultimately, you know, we're pretty good. Our background is pretty steeped in this sort of guerrilla warfare and, you know, force multipliers and all that stuff. And it's still, you don't get everything right. It's not, sometimes you pick the wrong fight. Sometimes you forgot to train on this and that came up. Or, you know, so it continues to be something that, while we're really good at that model, you know, it's still constant effort forward. So it's not like you can just take this and say, okay, I'm going to start doing that tomorrow and it's just going to be problem solved. It's a long, tedious process.
No, it's very much the long play to a big solution. So if you want to solve a big problem, you've got to figure out a way to be in it for the long term and take the long view of it, because big problems don't get solved like that, like you said. And so, you know, part of this too is you've got to be willing to take your losses in this model, because, and this is where most people aren't able to do it, because if I know how to do something and I do it over and over again, I get pretty good at it. And then if I make a business around my skill at doing that one thing, that's a pretty straightforward problem, right? I mean, if I want to, you know, make soap in my basement and sell it to people, once I learn how to do that, it's pretty straightforward. I make my soap, you know, I steal the fat from the clinic, I make my soap, I offer it to the boutiques. Like, great, that's a nice little lifestyle business, you know?
It. This is wonderful.
Exactly. You're selling rich ladies their own asses right back too. But if I want to really do that on a wide scale, I've got to teach somebody else how to do it. And that person on day one's not going to be as good at it as I am, because I've been doing it for a while. And so I've got to teach them how to do it, or write a playbook, right, and show them how to do it. And I also have to accept the fact that maybe they're not going to be as good at it as me, or maybe I picked the wrong person to do this. Like, maybe I want to open up my soap shop in Chicago, so I talk to some people and I feel good about it, and they end up sucking at it.
Or maybe the person that you teach how to make it sucks at selling it.
Yes.
Because you were a multi-tool, you could sort of do it all, right? You talked about it, you stole the fat, you could, you know, charm the ladies at the Saks Fifth Avenue counter or whatever, and they'd buy it, and wherever it was, right?
Yeah.
From Fight Club. If those of you who haven't seen it, shame on you.
If you shouldn't have given them the reference. They didn't get it. Shame on them.
Come on, right? You gotta, or else people might just think we're just, you know, there's someone out there that didn't get it. That's all right. Go see Fight Club. So it becomes about teams then at that point, and not everybody is the multi-tool.
Right. That's another great point. So not only do you need to be able to scale it and accept a certain level of maybe degradation of the quality right at first, but also just some risk that, look, you're going to have to let go of control. I mean, imagine, you never could be an SF guy if you were a real control freak, because how the hell are you going to land at your fire base in the middle of Afghanistan, way far away from the next friendly position, and have maybe, like, we had 90 Afghan security guards around us. Like, look, my physical security, like my physical well-being, really my life, I guess, if you want to put it in more blunt terms, depended on a bunch of people that I'd never met securing the perimeter of our fire base
that, by the
every
way,
night.
Looked just like the bad guys.
Exactly. And so, I mean, you just can't control everything. At some point, you've got to be willing to build a relationship, establish some trust, you know, in some cases impart some knowledge and some training, and get some goodwill going to the point where you've got to be able to trust other people at some point to do some significant components of the mission that you're trying to accomplish, or you're just never, ever going to get there. And so part of it is replication of your ability to do certain things. But like you just said, I think really well, is it's not like the old Soviet assembly line where you're just pounding out people that can do, exactly the same thing. You've actually got to be savvy enough to put the right person against the right task. And so now I'm willing to let go of control, but I'm also smart enough to say, you're probably good to do this, but I need you to do that, because you can't just have, stamped out automatons and the business is just going to scale like that, because that's not going to happen regardless of how good your playbook or your business SOP or whatever this thing is that you've created.
Yeah, so if anybody out there wonders kind of how we come up with what we're going to talk about on a given day, it's usually a little bit of, at some point in the morning of any given, what's today?
Thursday.
Yeah, any given Thursday, it's like, hey, what are we going to talk about today, Blayne? And he sort of says, I don't know. Well, anyway, today I said, hey, we're going to talk about guerrilla marketing, and sort of inspired because I was in DC last week. How did it go? Constellation, Nikki was here.
It was good.
Cool.
It was good. We had a good crowd. They ate some chicken feet, I think. There was some Old Bay. They cheated. There was Old Bay allowed, so the urban austere cooking class was a little more bougie than I would have liked, but they still ate some chicken feet, so it was good.
Yeah, and so I was up in DC. I don't know, call it whatever you want. I was a guest in one of my old marketing professor's classes, and taught a little bit of a case study on the Tough Mudder model, and then related it to a GORUCK model in terms of how to start a revolution. And so Tough Mudder did that of sorts with the obstacle course racing model, right? I mean, hey, the mud run sort of that became a big thing. And
yeah, there were a lot of people around the same time, but I think you could give them credit and not get too much argument, probably.
Yeah. So talked about that, and then talked about our roots in sort of a partnership with Tough Mudder, which was very much designed to force multiply on the advertising or the marketing front. So we had early days, GORUCK had a partnership with Tough Mudder, and they put us on their website. We led some events in tandem with them, sort of. And so that gave us a lot of awareness early on. That's kind of default to what you knew or what you know. I didn't know how to do Google AdWords or Facebook ads or whatever, but I did know how to go talk to people and say, hey, this could work.
Yep.
And so that was sort of that model. And then got into the GORUCK model and sort of where we are. And I think ours is a longer play, and it took us a while to find a razor sharp focus, because gear, events, rucking, all different other kinds of events, firearms stuff, apparel, other stuff to be seen, but started talking about what it means to foment a revolution, to start a revolution in a business sense. And I taught the class the sort of post 9/11. This is the playbook of how to do this by, with, and through somebody else. And there's no reason why that can't work in business. If you give somebody something of value, great value, they might pay for it. And they usually do in business. I mean, sometimes you create a video for free and they share it virally, but eventually someone in business has to make money. That's how this works.
Yep.
So the GORUCK model being, hey, gave someone a pretty good value, a pretty good valuable thing. Someone goes and takes a challenge, gets this sort of life-changing experience, and we've got GORUCK Nation full of GRTs who then get out there and tell people about GORUCK. And back then it was, awareness was king. We had none. There's no email list. There was none, right? Except for my mom and my dad and their friends, right? I mean, there was, where do you start from?
Yeah.
How do you do it? Where do you start? And that's a start. You start with however many people that you know, and you say, will you help me? They're your first force multipliers, right? So you give them things to share online or whatever. Then, if you can give people outside of that circle more, then you can start to really build a revolution out. And so the model was, hey, someone goes through one of our events, they tell their friends about GORUCK, and that leads to awareness for GORUCK. And our job is to just be on message, which has taken us a while to get more focus as far as what we want those new people to do when they find out who we are.
Yeah, totally agree. So the whole idea then is when all of these people have been given some value and they've had a great experience and they feel compelled to share with their friends about GORUCK, the next step is, what do we want them to be saying? mean, the first part is we want them to say it's great because I had a great experience. So that's good. Without that, the rest of it's sort of moot, right? But we also have been working and are continuing to work on being clear in that, well, who are we? What do we really value? And what do we want people saying about us? If they have to be responsible for sort of spreading the word, then what's the best way to do that? And we've been a gear company and we're an events company, and people are always asking. Everyone I talk to, actually, not everyone, I shouldn't say that. Most of the people I talk to, when they're like, so you guys do the events, right? And you sell some gear too. A lot of people that I talk to, even reasonably informed people, think that 75 or 85% of our business is running events, and a much smaller percent, 15, 25%, is selling gear. And I suspect that's the case because the word of mouth marketing is almost exclusively done by people who have done the event. And so what do they tell their friend about first? This rad event I did where it was real hard and I was up all night. And so you can imagine as the word of mouth spreads, that's the mechanism by which most of it's spreading. Oh, and by the way, I have this rucksack that I really like. And so it's been tough to figure out, are they an events company that sells really good gear? Are they a gear company that just sort of does events to prove out the gear? And I think what we've really been able to crystallize more recently is we've been asking the wrong question. It's actually kind of neither, right?
Yeah. I mean, so on the business front, and I'll get to rucking in a second. On the business front,
I was trying to get you to say it's about. Okay.
It's about rucking. And on the business front, if you don't have that focus, the problem is my head's still sort of in this class from Georgetown. I'm still getting emails from the students in the class. It's been fun. Sort of brought me back to somehow the fundamentals matter more now than they did to me back then.
Oh, I could totally get that.
I mean, I felt like I had to break every rule, or I didn't know the rules, so I just had to sort of figure it out. And
screw the rules.
Right?
What do they know?
I mean, also, if you are leading a challenge every weekend or 2 challenges every weekend and then, showing back up for class, you might not absorb the rules as well as you would hope for, right? So if you don't have this focus, if you can't communicate what you are, people get confused. If people get confused, then whatever word of mouth marketing or whatever advertising budget dollars that's a lot costlier than word of mouth, which is free. So a lot of the budget goes into people not understanding it, and then they leave and they don't know, and then those people don't tell anybody, right? And that's a problem. You want to capture the people that come to your site. So in terms of, are we a gear company? Yes, we started out as one. Are we an events company? Yeah, that stole our hearts there for years and years and years. And ultimately the shift was to the events brought us to a bigger place than I'd say just a gear company, because I really don't think the world needs too many more gear companies. There's lots out there. This sort of, or apparel companies. This idea of, 2 dudes that wanted to start a shirt company because they just couldn't find a good enough shirt.
There just isn't a shirt out there. I looked everywhere, and there wasn't one in the entire market. Stop the madness!
How many billions of people on the planet, and you're so special that there's not one shirt out there? Oh, by the way, there's custom tailors. Okay. So that's a lot cheaper than starting a business. But, that aside, right, it's sort of, it was a fun class talking to those guys. So if we'd been just gear or just events, I think that's fine. That's good, right? The events are great, the people are great, but the events pushed us to people. The people are what the indigenous forces, the GRTs, GORUCK Nation, are what have pushed us to do more. So can you see the picture of the beer in the frame at all? I'll go get it real quick. Okay. So this one. This was the first picture on the GORUCK training page. It's a picture of a delicious looking beer that I.
What kind of beer is that, would you say?
It's not a Budweiser. Actually.
It was in Portland, right? Do they even serve Budweiser in Portland, Oregon?
So one time I did order a Budweiser in Portland, Oregon, and she asks me, literally, "Are you sure?" Right? I'm like, I just want a Budweiser, and there was so much judgment from her. I did not order food.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. I did not order food. I was really pretty convinced.
We love you, Portland.
Yeah.
Portland is a great city.
But the idea of training was, in the early days, was drink a beer and suck it up, you'll be fine, right? It's all mental, whatever. And so people pushed us to say, hey, we want to learn more about the training side of this. And so, reluctantly we started to share more. And it's taken us a long time to codify a lot of that in terms of what that means for us. But if you boil it down, rucking is the foundation of Special Forces training. And it's the foundation of the GORUCK Challenge. And it's a growing category, new category of fitness. And so, that was the sort of takeaway for the class at Georgetown that sort of inspired this guerrilla marketing chat, which is GORUCK is basically a fitness thing with backpacks on. It's called rucking. You put some weight on your back and you go for a walk. It's called rucking. And so, of course, since we're focused on rucking, of course we build rucking gear. Of course we build rucking apparel. Of course we put on rucking events. Of course we teach you how to ruck. So it's more up here, and I'm just kind of sick of I say that with a smile on, are you a gear or an events company? Because it's both, but that's complicated. It's too complicated, in fact. So there was always lots of confusion. And so part of the process of the last years, well, probably almost 4 years now, is figuring out how to create a real rucking revolution that is the byproduct of the guerrilla forces that are out there.
Yeah, so there's pros and cons to this, right? The pro is, for guys like you and I that understand GORUCK and have a pretty clear line of sight into what we want to do in the future, it feels really good to say, look, we're a company that's about rucking. And so of course the gear makes sense, of course the apparel makes sense, of course the events make sense. It all feels so much more orderly in my brain now, right? To have the proper kind of hierarchy and to say, look, the first bullet point in our big strategy here is that we want to grow rucking. And I like that too, because I can sit at my desk every day or stand at my desk every day, and if I'm at a loss for what I need to be doing right now, I can just sort of think like, well, what can I do to help grow rucking? Like I literally do that, by the way. I don't have a lot of just spare moments in the day, but like when I have time to think or I have open space in my schedule, I think about what my priorities are, and generally it's either spending time with somebody on our team, because that's never time poorly spent, or what can I do to help grow rucking? Whether that's sharing a training video, reaching out to somebody on Instagram and saying, hey, what do you know about rucking, or whatever the case is, that is where my head is at, and that is awesome for me. The downside of this is, backpacks is already a category that people can easily understand. Even like endurance events, the GORUCK Challenge is unique, but you could explain it and benchmark it against some other event maybe they're more familiar with. Rucking is, as you said, basically a whole new category. So the upside is it makes things very clear for us. Our priorities are great, and we kind of are somewhat in the space on our own, not completely, but we're in a good position.
We're the only company that would say our focus is rucking.
Exactly.
We're it. That's awesome. It's a great space to be in.
I'm a big fan of that. The downside is we've got to educate a whole lot of people on, well, what is rucking? Like if you're creating a new category, then by definition, there's a fair amount of sort of awareness and education that's got to go on for people to be like,
it's a fitness thing with backpacks on. It's like
that's it.
Hiking is just rucking in the mountains, right? So if you can ruck anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was actually talking to Andy earlier today about this, and like the metaphor that has like solidified in my brain on this is it's like about because I've over the last couple of years really have done more surfing. I really like surfing, so I don't know. I think of things in that term sometimes.
It's so awesome that you always wear a rucksack when you surf.
I know. Even when I'm surfing, I wear a rucksack. It's so rad. It's my sea dry bag and everything. But the thing is, we really believe that like there's a wave coming. Like we've been kind of reading the meteorological data and like paying attention, and we believe there's a wave coming that's called rucking, and we're starting to see it. And listen, if you're watching this right now, you do too, because the only people that are watching Jason and I bullshit and drink beer about rucking are people that already kind of get it. So all of you are sort of on the leading edge of this. You're all kind of with us, sort of standing at the cliff or on the beach, like way out there somewhere, there's a wave coming. And that's great. And I think, like you said, we're the only company probably in the world that says rucking is our primary focus.
No, not
so,
probably.
So in many cases,
Definitely.
like we're grabbing our board and paddling out into the water like on our own right now, which is pretty awesome, especially when you know there's a big wave coming and no one else knows about it yet. So I think that's kind of where we are now. There's still a lot of work to be done though to make this a reality, because the next thing you got to do is like you got to paddle into position for that wave. So just because there's a big wave coming doesn't mean that you're going to be right where you need to be.
We do not want to be the smiley face guy that never made a dime off of the smiley face, right?
That was Forrest Gump, right? That he did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we still have some work to do, and we rely a lot. By the way, speaking of guerrilla marketing, we rely a ton on feedback and our connection with our community to let us know, now that we're out in the water and we all kind of agree the wave's coming, to help us sort of paddle to be where we think we need to be when that thing breaks. So we're not like too far inside and just get crushed by it, or we're too far outside and we just kind of see it go by us. We need to be doing the right things with the right stuff at the right time in order to be able to catch this thing.
And then it just so happens we build the best rucking gear. So, the other side of this is you have to have a great business to go along with this great mission, right? And the mission is not just for itself, right? Get millions and millions of people to ruck. It's not...
Yeah, that's a pretty cool mission, but I get you.
It is. It's not... There's no way to fund that mission without a business, though, right?
Right.
There just has to be. So it would be kind of too bad if it were built on a business house of cards, or if our team were built on a house of cards internally. If either of those, if the wave came and it were too big on rucking and it collapsed either of those, then we just did a whole lot of work for the world, which is great. I'm all for that.
Yeah,
but it wouldn't necessarily, when Under Armour or Nike decides that this is going to be a big thing, first off, that'll be great for us, right? We'll view it as competition.
At least for a while, yeah.
It'll be competition, and that's fine, but neither has our story, and neither will do as good of a job as we do. So, some things you can't just throw money at.
Yeah, but the point you're making is the most important one, though, I think, because even if you paddle out and you get into position, like at the end of the day, you still have to have the stuff to ride that wave. And I think that's probably to be determined for us. I'd like to think that we're ready to go, or we will be ready when the time comes, but we have some advantages. We're standing on the shore with our friends. We believe the wave's coming. We have the balls to paddle out and to get into position and
no wetsuit
to get at it.
Freezing ass
Screw
cold water.
that, man.
Don't catch the wave. You're gonna die of hypothermia.
Yeah, but that's when you think about the strategy we talk about internally with our team, we talk about growing rucking and really owning rucking, which to me means being able to sort of build the wave and then get in position on the wave. But the last piece that we always talk about is that we have to be able to kind of deliver the promise, which is when we decide to go ahead and paddle onto that thing, we have to have the stuff to be able to ride it. And that's, I think we'll figure that out. It's going to be a hell of a ride either way.
Yeah, we'll make mistakes and stuff. You always do. But, it won't be the first mistakes we've ever made, and the stakes will be a lot lower this time.
True. Yeah, for sure. So talk to me, let's maybe go back to the guerrilla marketing thing a little bit, because I would like maybe for you to share, or I can jump into on some stuff that's maybe a little bit more tactical that people can use in whatever they're doing, whether they're in a big business and they want to get better at sort of the unconventional warfare, or whether they're the little guy and they're still trying to overthrow the tyrannical regime or whatever. What does that actually look like? When we say you've got to be kind of a guerrilla marketer, or you've got to use your kind of unconventional methods, what's that actually look like? Vice, taking out an ad in GQ, getting a billboard in Times Square.
I'll tell you what
whatever.
It's not anymore is, so Facebook is a platform, for instance, that will allow you to force multiply, in theory, right? You post something, and if it's great, people will share it, and that will drive awareness. That awareness is king.
Attention is king.
Attention, awareness, sure.
Yep.
What's the difference? Attention, awareness?
Well, I look at it like this. If someone's aware of you, that's great. I've heard of them, whatever. But if they're giving you their attention, that means you have an opportunity to actually convey to them what it is you want to deliver. Maybe it's
okay.
Maybe it's semantics.
Yeah. No. That makes perfect sense. Yeah. So what you want is for people to find out about you, right?
You want for people to give a shit about you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And so you have to give people ammunition at sometimes. For me, back in the day, it was sometimes I had to go through my entire list, my phone every single person in my phone in 2010 got a phone call from me. For a lot of those, I was sitting in a parking lot at Cedar Point Amusement Park in Cleveland. And if they had not bought a GORUCK bag already or something, or didn't know about GORUCK, then they got a call from me and I gave them a 50% off. Here's your code. Now, will you please buy one of these bags? By the way, GORUCK needed money. Didn't have a lot of money, had too many bags.
It's amazing how scrappy you are when you're broke, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. And then you just forget to hustle, right? And so I mean, what else does it mean? I mean, I think the more that you give people, you give something of value away, and you ask someone to do something in return, some way or another. I mean, that's sort of the blueprint. But the first part, the second part does not precede the first part. If you know somebody, that means you've given them your time, your friends in life. That you can probably ask more of them. Please share this, please do that. But you have to give away something of real value.
That's the golden ticket right there, is the value piece. Because there are a lot of people out there that they think that if they can just grab your attention instantaneously, then that's good enough. Or I'm going to create celebrity for myself based on, attention-grabbing behaviors and those kinds of things.
That is the worst strategy. That is why marketing devolves into pornography.
Yeah.
It turns into, I will just show something so outlandish that
something provocative enough to get your eyes.
Everyone will click, but it doesn't work.
No, so this is the difference. There's a lot out there, by the way, and some people might say it does work, I guess, depending on your ends, but clickbait.
Not for a good brand unless you're, Playboy.
Not if you're taking the long play and you actually want to solve a big problem. Clickbait is not the way to go. And first of all, I'm not like a real expert on this. I know a little bit about it, but I can tell you that clickbait will get you clicks. But if people are not happy with where that click takes them or doesn't really deliver any value, other than like maybe seeing a hot girl for 2 seconds, however much value that's worth, which, by the way, is almost nothing in today's age because there's a bajillion places you can go.
There's lots of
to
things
do
you
that.
can Google. Kids.
Yeah, it's worthless almost, right? It's clickbait. It's almost a reflexive response that people have, but they're making no investment in you. There's no reason for them to care about you. The stuff that really works, though, is you figure out what you can give people that's of some value. And then they're willing to stay with you for a little while and learn a little bit more about you. And maybe that builds a little bit of credibility. And then you give them a little more value later. And it might take 20 or 30 instances of you giving them that value until they kind of say, all right, now Jason and Blayne have been giving me real value on the GORUCK show. I mean, that stuff they talk about
You're welcome.
Is brilliant. And I use it and apply it in my everyday life. And I'm way better for it. And so after 20 or 30 episodes, maybe then when Jason says you should really have a GR1, then I'll consider buying one.
Or you should, you should go find 10 friends and invite them on a ruck with you. I mean, tell them to bring their whatever, right? I mean, maybe eventually they'll buy a GR1.
Don't ridicule them for not having a GORUCK.
Yeah, don't do
That's
that.
a bad place to start. That's like anyone who tries to get their friends into like CrossFit or rucking or like whatever, any of these like flare-up things, like not rucking is, but like the paleo diet. If you start off by saying like, look, man, you're gonna die because you're eating so bad, you don't even know how foolish you are for eating that bread. Like, that's not a good way to convert somebody over to your side of the table. So if you go to your friends and say, hey man, you should really be rucking because running, it's just injuring people. It's the worst. Running sucks. You're stupid if you're running. You should totally ruck. Like, please don't do that.
Ask him how these feel.
Yeah. You can ask leading questions. But don't make them feel like an idiot or you're better than them. And the same with the rucks. Please don't do that.
Do your knees hurt? Oh, that's why it's called runner's knee, right? Like, hey, there's this other thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you ruck, you don't get runner's knee or tennis elbow. Think about that.
Boom. Either one. I've had both.
Yeah.
I've had both big time.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's another key component of it is you've got to figure out a way to move people toward the value that you want to give them without making them feel bad about where they're sitting right now. That's a big part of growing a revolution. I mean, and it's a common misconception too. Like, to some extent, you need to identify people's like pain point when you're in sales to get them to acknowledge that, man, maybe I really am unhappy with what I'm doing now, and maybe I need a better solution. But if you do that by sort of directly ridiculing whatever they're currently doing, here's the trick, it will immediately make them defensive of that thing. And I know because I used to be in sales, and I will tell you, if I would go into a potential client and they were using one of my competitors and that competitor was terrible, and what I was offering them was clearly better, if my tactic was, look, you really should be with us because these guys are terrible in all these ways and you're basically crazy for being with them because they're so much, they're so inferior to what we're offering. The psychology of that is they say, you're calling me an idiot. I'm a medical doctor and I've been using this service for a long time. Are you telling me that I'm basically some sort of idiot that doesn't care about my patients for using them? And they'll start defending the crappy service that they're using just because you've offended them so much that they're not listening to anything you have to say. So you've got to figure out a way.
Unless it's Comcast, nobody defends Comcast.
Everybody hates Comcast. That's very clear. Yeah.
Empowerment.
Cox Cable is the worst.
Empowerment is the trick. Well, how do you like them? These kinds of things.
Right, you
Let
walk
other
them
people
to
talk.
their own decision, but you offer them something of value and then you allow them to make a decision as to whether or not they want to participate in the revolution or not.
And you get them to like you.
Yeah, and so the old school, like Gestapo, like put a gun to your head and say you're changing your ways. Like, look, forced compliance is not the same thing as like actually building people to be loyal members of the revolution. I was doing a thing just this week with some salespeople down in St. Petersburg, and we talked about this analogy of the meat hook versus fish hooks, right? Like the meat hook is like the heavy-handed, like you just whoosh, and you can just pull a big chunk of meat your way because you got this big, huge meat hook, But it's so big and like violent that it just destroys some percentage of whatever it hits, right? And like that's like taking your kid and saying, "Go to your room." Why? Because I said so. Like you can go the nuclear option. You can give anyone the meat hook and force them if you have any leverage, right? If you have leverage, you can do that. But like what I used to sort of do in that world, and the way that the guerrilla marketing works, is you put a little fish hook in something, and you say it's kind of non-invasive. It doesn't hurt, and it's a little thing. And for growing your business, you might say, "Hey, I can help you out with this." So now you're helping them out with some small little thing that they're not paying you for, but it's useful. It's not changing their life, but maybe it's useful. And then over time, you're helping them out with a second thing. Or then maybe you make something a little bit easier for them another way. And over a period of time of working with somebody, there's maybe 30 or 40 of these little fish hooks that have all gone in small. And then now, like if they're pulling away, it's like, oh man, they're good. Like you've got them. You can reel them in now gently because you've done it a little bit at a time. Whereas, if you hit someone with the meat hook, like they'll come towards you because they don't have a choice. But given the choice, they're out of here.
Fish, right?
No. It's just a metaphor. There's at least one of these every show.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're all good, although this is a really good one for you salespeople out there. It actually does work. No, but the idea is a little bit of value, a little bit of time, without feeling like you're ever coercing somebody, ends up keeping them with you, and you're able to bring them to you in a way that's much more sort of subtle and gentle and not, the heavy-handed way, which might get you clicks, it might get you customers, like you might get the better end of a deal by saying, I'm gonna give you as little as possible and I'm gonna get as much as possible from you. But if you're just out there meat hooking people, eventually you're gonna get known for it, and it's just not, people are just gonna start running from you.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be that.
Nobody wants to work like that, really.
No, would you say, we're the same age, so I think we're both old enough to remember. There was a time, and I don't remember if this was the case when I was in business school or maybe it was before, but if you took a course on negotiation 10 years ago, certainly 15 years ago, it was all about, like, I want to get as much as possible and give as little as possible. Yeah, actually, Lee back here actually took a course, a Harvard Business School thing in negotiation recently. And maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong, but like my personal experience has been, I don't really negotiate that way. In fact, my personal philosophy is any professional relationship I'm in, I want to be able to give 51% of the value in that relationship. I actually find that works much better, is to sort of race to 51%, and then you end up having much better relationships professionally with people, and you can have many more of them than if people eventually realize, like, hey, I'm getting 20% out of this and I'm giving 80%. Like, then they're just going to pop smoke at the next best offer.
It's like, do you want to be right or do you want to be married?
Yeah. Would you prefer to be right or have a relationship? Yeah.
Are people rational, or are they? Ooh, that was almost pretty foul. Are they rational or are they emotional? And I would argue that they're emotional. And by the way, if you want a great book on negotiations and stuff, go get Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss.
You're
Awesome
welcome,
book.
Chris.
You're welcome, Chris. We
Not
love
that,
you.
not that he needs any more. Chris Voss is killing it right now.
Yeah, he's out there.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to kill it, though. I think he's definitely out there.
Let's ask him. I bet he's
doing great. Yeah, I'll ping him. Chris Voss was he's a former lead hostage negotiator, international lead hostage negotiator for the FBI. He was my negotiations professor at Georgetown when I was there. He wrote a book called Never Split the Difference, which basically turns on its head this idea of extracting blood from every rock that you find and stuff, and says, philosophically, which I completely agree. I agree with things that flow the direction of human nature, you know?
Yeah,
And
like
so,
behavioral economics.
yeah.
You know,
People
we're not
are
all perfectly
emotional.
rational actors.
People are emotional. It's like people expect, if I didn't tell the class at Georgetown I meant to, it's like, you can expect me to not be 100% rational about GORUCK. I've got a lot of past, a lot of history wrapped up into this place and what it means and all that stuff. And so there are times where that's great and there are times where that's a detriment. But it's certainly not 100% rational. And I think that someone comes in and says, hey, we want to do this deal or that deal. And emotion is going to be the first response, right? And then you temper that with reason. And most people are like that. And so, why would we assume that everybody is rational all the time?
No, it's not a good assumption. And so you studied economics in college, as did I, and most of the economic models that we learned, the fundamental underlying assumptions of those models is that human beings are rational, self-interested actors.
The stock market will never be wrong because it's so rational.
And all the information's already baked in, right? Which is not true because people behave emotionally all the time. Look at Bitcoin recently, right? There are a lot of people that say it's still low and is going to be still so game-changing and whatever. But when you see, I was talking to some guys in the office, like, I'm gonna get on Bitcoin. And I'm like, okay, just be careful if you're getting in on it because you wanna make a quick buck, because what's gonna happen is, once the price gets high enough, some of the smart people that have been in it a long time are gonna wanna take some of their money off the table and become millionaires.
Yeah, that guy
That's
that said,
fair, right?
How did I get so rich? It's because I always sold so early.
Yeah.
I always sold too early, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they're going to take
strategy.
some of their money off the table. And when the people that got in a little after them start seeing them taking some of their money off the table, maybe they haven't made as much as the earliest people, but they've still made kind of a lot. So they're going to take some of theirs off the table, and then the first domino falls, and there becomes an irrational selling. And then some people that got in just very recently experience a loss because there was a non-rational sell-off event. And this happens in the stock market all the time. But take it out of the stock market. Like, people are first of all, they're not completely self-interested. At least most people I know are not. And they're definitely not perfectly rational. So you have to think about, how does this apply in the real world? And I think about, like, when I was on a fire base, we had all of our fuel airdropped to us because there wasn't a road, right? So all of our fuel for our trucks and generators and everything, it came in on G11 parachutes out of the back of a C-17. They had
bet that
four.
was cheap.
It was the worst, man. So we'd have to go out.
Thank you to the American taxpayer for
Yeah.
keeping Blayne and the guys safe.
Yeah, it was our only
We
way.
love you guys, man. We love you guys.
So, well, it gets worse. It gets worse. So they would kick as many as 22 pallets at a time out of the back of a C-17, and it would be 4 55-gallon drums of JP8 fuel per pallet. So 22 times 4, you get 88 55-gallon drums of fuel falling out of the sky. It's on this flat spot on the ground that, like, hopefully we could secure the perimeter long enough to get this stuff loaded with a Bobcat onto the back of a truck and driven back to the fire base without getting our asses blown up. We had to do it at least once a week. It was the worst freaking deal ever. And this is how we sustained ourselves, right? So this is how we get our fuel. And so we bring it back in these drums, and then we can pour it into the generator and get it onto our trucks and all that, and that's fine. But then eventually you're drawing 88 drums a week. Like, how quickly do these big metal 55-gallon drums start adding up? I mean, there's nowhere to put them. Our fire base was like 200 yards by 200 yards. I mean, it was not big. So we had nothing to do with these drums. And I hope I don't go to jail for this, but we had some some people that were working
Things
for
you'll
us
hear on the
locally.
GORUCK
Yeah,
show.
golly.
I hope I don't go to jail for
But this is important. But we had these people that worked for us that had a way of loading those drums onto the back. We had no way of like saving them or getting them back to Uncle Sam or whatever. They had a way to get them to somewhere in one of the bigger cities where they could get paid for these things in scrap metal or direct usage or whatever. You know, I didn't have time for that. That wasn't a primary function of my mission in Afghanistan. I just wanted these barrels to be gone.
Yep.
And guess what?
Rapport building,
that engendered
whatever.
a lot of loyalty amongst this one individual in particular who happened to be also responsible for my physical safety every night. And I started to get a whiff of how much money this individual was making off of these drums, and it was insanity. And so one way to think about this would be, that's some bullshit. Like, why should this guy be able to make this insane amount of money off of these things, you know, as this, you know, dirt farming kind of Afghan dude? He's making many, many times what I'm making over here as a special forces captain. But at the end of the day, who cares? It didn't matter. Like the value to me was so great that, look, fine. The number was irrelevant to me when I actually thought about it, because the physical safety of me and my team and our ability to accomplish our mission was the value in that transcended any dollar amount. And so it was like, who cares?
Water that down a million times, and you've got all the same rationale for why you got to bail the banks out in 2008, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you explain to the folks that you're going to bail the banks out when it's the banks that got us into this problem? In theory, right?
Sure.
I mean, in actuality as well.
We all were culpable of that, and especially the real estate bubble.
You know.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
So I guess, I don't know, that was a long story basically to say, if you care too much about what other people are getting out of a relationship,
Give more. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to be successful. Like you should understand whether or not you or your organization are getting what you need to get from the relationship, and if that relationship is valuable to you, and if that's a yes, then you should continue to proceed and give as much value as you can, irrelevant of, you know, how much you perceive them to be getting, because that is not the name of the game. Having the biggest piece of the pie is pretty stupid if you're blind to how big the pie is.
Yeah. So we went on that. We went to the Grand Canyon with Bunny, right? From
at some point we'll have Coach Bunny sitting here, like
Cigar City CrossFit.
Ben, if you're watching, man,
and he said something, and we've been saying at GORUCK for a long time. It's not about you. Right? That's one of the lessons of the challenge.
Pretty sure it's on a T-shirt or something.
It is. Yeah. And he had this moment. I don't know. He's never seen that T-shirt, I'm sure, or whatever, right? And he goes, "Hey, what I've learned throughout the course of my life," and he's a Green Beret, been in the Army for a long time, started a CrossFit business, doing great down in Tampa. Like a guy you definitely want to go on a guy's trip with. A lot of fun, you know. And he goes, "You know, I learned a long time ago, when in doubt, if I just default to this idea that it's not about me, then things have a real great tendency to work out better." And that's so true. But we forget that in times that are hard, or times when, you know, and so I guess it's kind of to sort of close the loop, and then we'll get to Bomber and some questions, if there are any, after all of this. And
do you guys give a shit about any of this? This is great stuff you're getting here.
And so to close the loop, it's sort of that's really what yes, you have to do the things that you need to do to either survive, thrive, do all of that stuff. But if your mindset is it's not about you, you're going to go a lot farther, even though that's counterintuitive.
Right, and look, just to try to put that back into the context of what we started with about kind of growing the revolution, or you know, the Special Forces mission in general. Those Green Berets that landed in northern Afghanistan and linked up with the alliance, like, it wasn't about them either. It wasn't their country. You know, it certainly was their mission, but they had to genuinely buy into the fact that we've got to work with these people to overthrow a tyrannical regime so they can have their country back, right? 0% chance of being successful if they're not able to adopt that mindset, because why else would they be there? It wasn't best for them. It wasn't best for their families. You know, it wasn't maximizing value or maximizing profit to them and their families as shareholders. The basic economic models didn't work for those guys, but yet they were there because it wasn't about them, and they were able to like deliver the value that those folks needed. And in the on a long enough timeline, that shit works.
I mean, that would be a scary mission. I mean, I'll say it, but it's sort of also the dream mission.
Oh,
Post 9/11.
every team that didn't get that mission, by the way, was pissed. I can tell you that right now.
Oh yeah.
If you don't get the gnarliest mission, you're jealous of the team that did.
Yeah.
That's just sort of the way it is.
Yeah.
Bomber,
Bomber.
would you care to join us, sir?
Yeah, I have a question.
I'm gonna pull his hair up. Yeah.
The photo of myself and Mickey, is that clickbait or porn?
Well, porn is clickbait, so it's both.
Awesome.
It's click porn.
I want
Next
to shout out
question.
to the Ruck Clubs, who are our best guerrilla marketer, the street marketing folks. If you want to become a Ruck Club, bomber at GORUCK.com.
Boom, and you want to,
Yes.
because it's getting better. The perks and bennies of being a ruck club are only,
They're awesome.
the value is only getting higher.
And the
Made
expectations.
it my personal, yeah, somewhat.
Yeah, yeah.
But the value is getting there. I mean, in all seriousness, we're, and Bomber and Lee over here behind the camera are both working really hard to,
Kit.
and Kit, to figure out how we can be as valuable a resource as possible and get more people rucking and make the ruck clubs more successful in whatever it is they're trying to do. So I'm deadly serious about that. That's a big deal.
Sarah Johnson asked, will there be any other colors for the curve strap rucks in future?
Well, we had wolf gray black, and we had wolf gray with black. And
We ordered more black recently because they were selling really well. So we ordered more black, I know for sure.
So that's.
There's more black coming.
There's more black
That's the
coming.
answer.
I will
have
say
one.
this
I love it.
about. I will say this. Lindsay's not still. Lindsay, come here.
Yeah, come on, Lindsay. I told her and she said no.
Come on, girl.
Come on. All right, everyone's got to see it. Come on. So Lindsay is wearing the first Fit Block approved piece of women's apparel. Awesome. Right? Big round of applause for Lindsay. All right. That's awesome. Yeah, it's great. So we promised, by we I mean I, promised that we would have women's apparel in this year of our Lord 2018.
Yeah.
And we will.
By God.
By God,
We're
we
gonna
will.
have it.
So we're doing pretty well. Working
So
a
no
lot.
one, Lindsay does. None of you guys have women's apparel yet, but Lindsay's got apparel.
Yeah.
So
She does.
Hit her
she
up.
has So full disclosure, she has lots of pieces that she doesn't like. That's what it takes to get
It's a
pieces
process.
that we do like.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's great, right?
Yeah.
So we're actually working on the bottoms as well. They're sort of simple pants. Yeah. Simple pants and more tops, more stuff. It's great. So good. How do you feel about it? Great?
Yeah, it's nice. It is.
there might be a scoop. There might be a scoop neck in our future somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've seen some cool stuff.
The t-shirt out of that same fabric. I mean, so the colors come in with the fabric that we have on hand, and then you scale it a little bit differently in terms of colors. But everyone likes that color, so I'm pretty sure we're gonna have that one. That's great.
And pink. Everything else will be pink.
Yeah, girls only want pink, right? I mean, is there sort of a thing that could make GRT women get more pissed at me than if we just say, oh, GRT women, they only want pink?
No, there's
Hey.
probably nothing more.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, great.
Cool.
So we're excited.
Yeah.
We'll have to have you on, and we'll talk about the whole process.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Can't wait.
Lindsay,
Yay.
I'll give you notice, Lindsay. Adam from Canada, who you might know, wanted to know
Yeah.
about Hulk challenge pants.
The challenge pants have a girthier kind of fit to them somehow because of the diamond gusset. I think we would have to look at the sales data on the simple pants Hulk and determine whether that's worthwhile. My best guess is no time soon.
I look at it pretty closely, and I don't think it's going to happen. My personal position on this is probably too strong. It's probably emotional, but like I know a lot of big, strong guys that have small waists and big quads and stuff that can absolutely wear the regular simple pants. like Bunny, who we just were on the hike
Well,
with,
Bunny
right?
likes pants that
Or-
look as if
That's
they're
true.
spray painted on.
He likes them to be a little bit more fitted.
Right? I mean-
but even Gus, Jimmy, those are guys that have pretty big legs and are able to wear. Now the whole, I gave each of them a pair of the Hulk pants, and they looked good. They work well for them, but they could also function in the simple pants. So I don't. Time will tell. If you guys love them, grab them. It's a good looking pair of pants. They certainly work for guys with bigger legs, but. I don't know. I just don't know that many guys that have 34-inch waists or 32-inch waists, and their thighs are so big they can't make the other pants work. So, I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see.
Monster just ripped a huge, nasty.
Nice.
I can't smell it yet.
You're used to it.
Maybe that's it.
All right.
Shane Raines, which I like giving you, he said he looks forward to the show every week. That's good to hear.
Oh, that's great feedback.
Shane?
Thank you.
Thanks,
And
man.
then, Cadre
Mostly because of
Shredder,
you, I'm sure.
who's coming to the Ruck Club, Battle of the Ruck Club.
I heard he's a real easy cadre that we're going to be mostly like just hanging out.
Yeah, he's going to be participating. Stoked about that. He said saving
nice.
one of the Genesees. He doesn't know what that is.
Okay. Shredder.
Put your name on it or something.
There you go.
This one's a great one. Scott Chapman, he lost 100 pounds due to rucking.
Whoa.
That's
100 pounds?
100 pounds.
So somebody who's out of shape and maybe can't run could do something like rucking
Yes.
and lose 100 pounds.
I mean, people are shamed into running, right? Because we also don't know any better because walking doesn't feel like a thing of accomplishment.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
So
yeah.
what happens is the world has said, well, if you're overweight or you want to lose 5 pounds or 10 pounds or 50 pounds, or if you don't look like that toothpick on the cover of whatever whatever magazine, then you should run yourself to happiness, right? And the problem is that it's counterproductive because it's really bad for a lot of people. And by bad, I mean it doesn't work because people don't
it's
like
hard
it.
on you.
It's hard on the
yeah.
body, and so it's not sustained. You don't sustain it. But if you say, hey, go get a buddy and put 20 or 30 pounds on your back and go for a walk and get some fresh air and talk about the world and come back to your garage or wherever you started and drink a beer or two and smile a couple times and then go about your day or your night, that sounds like a lot more fun to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, running sucks for most people, and walking feels lame for most people. But rucking,
Game changer.
there it is.
Fun to do
100
with friends.
pounds.
The wave's
Boom.
coming. Gosh dang it, the wave's coming. All right, get excited.
Dana Campbell, shout out to her. She introduces people to rucking all the time.
Thank you. That's
Shout
exactly. You should come be on the show and tell us about your guerrilla marketing tactics because that's what we're talking about.
And we have one complaint.
Yeah.
Let's
I
have
like
it.
to always do that.
Yeah.
If someone has negative
A
feedback.
hard question. Let's get it.
Josh says the biggest mistake GORUCK has ever made was getting rid of the man tie.
Well, it's not completely gone. You can still find them somewhere.
you,
I've
like-
got 2 in my desk right now.
Your brother Case has one.
Yeah, my brother Case has one.
We could probably take it from him.
These things happen. You could definitely strangle someone with it if you needed to.
So for context, that was a sort of a thick material multi-cam necktie.
And black.
It was black too?
And sand. It was the 1000 de Cordura. Yeah. It was pretty awesome.
The black one
If I don't
is the one
say
I wear.
so
The only
myself, it
tie
was
I own
pretty
is the
awesome.
one I wear.
But here's the problem. In isolation, it's sort of, the faithful soak it up, and I think a lot of them like it. But, I mean, I like it. I wear it when I have a suit on or something. But it's sort of, are we a tie company? I mean, those are the problems, right? We're not really a tie company, so...
Does the tie help you ruck?
Just
Would
gets
you wear it to
hard-
ruck?
It just gets hard to sort of sustain that. And so what gets easier is, maybe some year if we could go back and find the manufacturer that built it and do another run. But it's sort of a Christmas time, hey, throw the faithful a bone. There's no promises, and it's not on our radar. But this is how a lack of focus happens, is that you start to do too many of those, and then it's just game over.
Well, just because you can do something does not mean that you should do something.
Yeah, there's
Right.
lots of things we can't.
And we sort of have 2 lenses through which we pull every single decision now, which is, does it grow rucking? Does it promote rucking? Can you use it for rucking? And is it consistent with the SF way of life and kind of the SF avatar? And the tie you could maybe shoehorn in there. It's like occasionally an SF guy has to wear a tie, but you're reaching at that point. And you certainly don't need to wear a tie to ruck. So,
Yeah. Unless you're, a badass like Jason Bourne, like every Green Beret out there, and you find yourself
James Bond,
one
Jason
against
Bourne.
the world.
They're doing Muay Thai in a tuxedo.
Yep. Cool. Is that it?
Last, I'm stoked we have a guest. We have Howard Stern here from Savannah. I like
Howard?
to have
The
a
other
live
Howard
studio.
Stern. Sorry,
Yes.
guys. Yeah.
Charleston, not Savannah. There's a big
Oh, did I
difference,
say
by the way.
Savannah? Oh my God, I've got Savannah on my mind because of 9 Line. When we go up there for the.
So
5K, 10K.
9 Line has a 5K, 10K that supports a great charity in May, and Bomber's been talking about it since November. He can't wait to go back. So
Super
our friends at
stoked.
9 Line, Bomber cannot wait to be back. I know it's 5 months out, but we will be there and we will have bells on. And we got a new tent.
I'm so stoked.
It's
about
going to be
that
awesome.
tent. Tent's awesome. That's all I got.
Cool. Get Guerrilla out there. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.